Back in 1982, there was a Maryland college basketball player who was so dominant that people said he would change the NBA. His name was Len Bias. At the same time, another young prospect played in college who happened to be Michael Jordan. The only difference? Bias was taller, stronger, and more athletic than Jordan. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 days after he was drafted, so we never got to see their rivalry in the NBA. And I know it sounds like clickbait, but there was actually a time when Len Bias was better than Michael Jordan. Let me explain. But before we compare the two directly, we quickly need to look at Len Bias's rise. In his first college season, Len started just 13 of 30 games, averaging 7.1 points and 4.2 rebounds across 22 minutes per contest. He was still far from a finished product, but there were moments of brilliance, like when he effortlessly dunked on Brad Daugherty, the future #1 pick of his draft. What stood out from the beginning was his work ethic. He was willing to put in the work and was always trying to get better. So it was just a question of time when he was going to become a star. The breakthrough came as a sophomore, as Bias's production spiked to 15.3 points per game on 57% field goal shooting. In a highly anticipated January matchup against Michael Jordan and #1 ranked North Carolina, Bias was arguably the most electrifying star on the court, even in defeat. But it didn't stop there. Len kept increasing his numbers and in his final college season averaged over 23 points and 7 rebounds. This led to him winning Player of the Year in his conference 2 consecutive times. But that still doesn't answer our question: how does that compare to Michael Jordan? Well, in his last college season, MJ averaged 19 points and 5 rebounds, so that point goes to Bias. But let's start with the most obvious part, their physique. Len was a freak of nature, measuring 6'8" and 220 pounds of pure muscle. He was an explosive athlete with a vertical leap well above 40 inches. He complemented his thunderous power with the finesse to score however he needed to. His jump shot, rising straight up, hovering above the outstretched hands of helpless defenders, belonged in an art museum. And he had the range to back it up. In summary, Bias basically had the body of LeBron with crazy athleticism, good dribbling and shooting. Meanwhile, Jordan stood just 6'6" and weighed around 200 pounds, so Len had the physical superiority. However, Michael also had an incredible leaping ability alongside supernatural athleticism. And when it comes to offensive moves, MJ had just as many, if not more, tricks in his arsenal, all based on a smooth jump shot or high-flying dunk/layups. But what about mindset? As we already mentioned, Bias always settled for #1, which is quite similar to Jordan. It didn't matter if it was an easy walkthrough or a title game, these guys wanted to be the best. But the most important aspect in our comparison might be their clutch factor. Or in other words, how they performed when shit hit the fan. Michael gave a perfect example by making the game-winning jump shot in a 1982 NCAA championship game against Georgetown. So yeah, he was clutch, but so was Len Bias. On February 20, 1986, Bias dropped 35 points to spearhead an upset of #1 North Carolina, which was Jordan's team. Len always stepped up in big moments and even led his team to a conference title in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So was Len Bias really better than Michael Jordan? Technically, yes. Of course, it's very unlikely that he would have matched Jordan's greatness in the NBA, but during college, Len had better numbers and led a team that was way worse than MJ's to the Final Four. Okay, now we know how good Bias was in comparison to Jordan in college, but what actually happened afterwards? Michael Jordan was selected 3rd overall in the 1984 draft class. Meanwhile, Len Bias became the 2nd pick 2 years later in 1986 and was selected by the Boston Celtics. 2 days later, he died because of a heart failure after having consumed cocaine, even though he usually didn't take these kind of drugs. But what could have happened will blow your mind, because it would have altered the entire course of the NBA. The Celtics GM Red Auerbach knew about Bias years before his draft. He knew about his talent and planned to draft him long in the future. This is why the Celtics acquired the Seattle Supersonics 1986 first round pick in a trade for Jared Henderson 2 years earlier. They even spread rumors about Len so that the Cavaliers, who had the first pick, wouldn't select him. And it worked. Now, let me ask you something. What was your favorite Celtics super team? The 2008 trio of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce and Ray Allen? Or Larry Bird with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish? Well, the latter one could have been even greater. After Bias was drafted, the Celtics had made the NBA Finals in all of the last 3 years and won 2 of them. That means if Len Bias would have played in the NBA, we could have seen a serious Celtics dynasty. The 3 mentioned stars with Larry Bird as their leader were all in their late prime, so a new young star could have taken a lot of pressure from them. Ultimately, they very likely would have won more championships. Next up, if Len Bias developed into one of the league's best players and the Celtics built a new good team around him, their finals frenzy could have continued into the 90s. In conclusion, that means Magic Johnson's Lakers win less championships and maybe even Michael Jordan loses a ring or 2. Bias and Jordan built the next great rivalry after Bird and Magic, and now the 90s is not just a Chicago Bulls show, but Bulls vs Celtics. And with MJ not getting 3-peats and having less rings in his resume, he might not be considered the greatest player of all time. We could go on with this for hours, but I think you get the point. Len Bias could have had a profound impact on the history of the NBA. Unfortunately, this remains a what if. But I think we have to see the positive side of things. After Len's death, the NBA tightened their no-drug policy, and since that day, no NBA player has died because of cocaine abuse or similar substances. Now, if you want to help me out, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. So now you know about a player that was better than Michael Jordan, but you still don't know that Kobe and LeBron were almost traded. If you want to know more about it, make sure to check out this video. I'll see you there.